I'm Sandra Roper.
And you are running for civil court judge.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
And you are running as an independent Democrat.
That's correct.
Could you explain who an independent Democrat is?
Okay, well, the Democratic Party in Brooklyn is pretty much controlled by a very powerful machine. And although it's called the Democratic, it's not very democratic because it doesn't allow for many people to get involved in the process. So what I'm in a party of a slate that we've gotten together and we've decided to run as independent Democrats. There are currently 5 contested positions for civil court judge, and there are 11 people running. If we had not launched this campaign, then what would have occurred is that the people of Brooklyn would not have a choice. The very powerful Democratic machine, all they would have done is put the 5 names there, and you wouldn't be able to say, oh, should I vote for this one or that one? You just straight down the line. Do you see? So I am offering the people, and the slate that I'm running with are offering the people a choice. So that's what an independent Democrat is. Someone that's not part of the powerful Democratic Party machine of Brooklyn, which has had many, many problems over the years.
And you are a pharmacist.
Yes, I am.
Who became a civil rights lawyer.
That's correct.
How did that happen?
From I was 12 years old is really when I knew that I wanted to become a lawyer. It just so happens that it was Christmas time, and my mother went to buy I'm from Panama. And in the Panamanian culture, Christmas time is a very big thing. We get new furniture, we get new drapes, etc., etc. So my father sent my mom to go and get us a new furniture set. And we went to, I think it was J.P. Michael's on Fulton Street. And my mother bought a set. And we left from there, we paid the down payment and everything. Then we went to take the bus to go home. As we were going home, we saw another furniture store, Siemens, with the exact same furniture set for considerably less money. So we went back to J.P. Michael's to tell J.P. Michael, my mother's, to say we don't want it anymore since we found it cheaper. They said, oh, no, you can't do it. Keeping in mind that being from Panama, our first language is Spanish. So my mother had an accent, and probably he thought, oh, he can tell her whatever he'd like. But one of the good things about my parents is that they prepared us to come to this country. They paid for us to go to English school so that when we got here, we would do well. And by the grace of God, I was always an honor student from the time I came to this country. And so I read it, and my mother read it, and she says the contract specifically states in fine print that you have 3 days. So he said, no, that's not. So we went and we got a lawyer, our family lawyer from Panama, and he fought, and we got our money back. That's when I decided that I wanted to help people that couldn't help themselves. So I said, I want to be a lawyer. However, I had a speech impediment. I've always been an honor student, but I had a very bad stuttering problem, very bad. So I never thought that I actually could become a lawyer because of my speech impediment. Always an honor student. So by the time I got to high school, I had excellent grades, and everyone thought I should be a doctor. I had received, in high school, they gave me a 6-year biomedical scholarship, whereby I would have been a doctor in 6 years, and I graduated early, so by 22 I would have had my MD degree. I said no, because I know now, the same thing I know then, is that I can't handle blood and things like that. So I decided to become a pharmacist.
Wow.
Because the hospital not too far from where we are right now, that's where I started in the healthcare field. Because my grandmother, when she came to the country, I came with her. She started working at a hospital, Interfaith Hospital. It's called Interfaith. At that time, it was St. John's Episcopal Hospital. And she started me working in the hospital routinely. I said, you know what? Then I started working in a pharmacy, and I decided to go for pharmacy. I went on full scholarship. So, becoming a lawyer, somewhere along the line, maybe in my early 20s, my stuttering stopped. Just stopped, just like that. And I said, well, maybe I can do this now. Okay. And I did. And this is 30 years later. I'm a lawyer for the last 30 years.
And why does the press refer to you as the woman with the velvet gloves and steel balls?
Okay. What happened? In 2001, I ran for district attorney. It just so happens, someone said, I had done so many things. I'd done race discrimination. I helped someone who had been denied his ability to be promoted to captain for 25 years. I helped a woman 30 years. They had denied her ability to become an engineer in that particular company. And there's so many things that I had done, and I wanted another challenge. And I was just having lunch one day because I was the president. Are you familiar with Habitat for Humanity, the Jimmy Carter Work Project? They build homes for people all over the world.
Yes.
And it just so happens I was the chairperson for Brooklyn. So we were having a build and we were taking a break, and a friend of mine said, there's term limits next year. Why don't you run for office? I said, okay. Just like that.
And you did?
I did, but what happened was I was going to run for city council. And what happened was I was going to run with someone called Judge John Phillips. He was going to run for district attorney, and I was going to run with him for city council. What happened was that the district attorney of Brooklyn, Mr. Charles Hynes, took Judge Phillips away and locked him up someplace where we couldn't find him, because he knew that he was running for district attorney. As a result of that, we weren't really sure where he was. So, a long story short, I decided to take the baton and run for district attorney instead of city council because of Judge Phillips. And after I did that, the district attorney of Brooklyn that I ran against, he gave me such a hard time. He abused his power. It became so bad that I asked for help from John Ashcroft, the Attorney General of the United States, and lo and behold, I did, because my supporters were harassed. I had the most unprecedented election case in the history of New York State. From that district attorney, Charles Hynes. He threatened me. He said, I'm going to disbar you. He had his people threaten the people that helped me. And I'm talking about people that have never really gotten involved in the process before to get petitions signed for me, etc., etc. And I came really close, but I lost. So he decided to make an example of me. And he said it. In 2005, he said, whenever you think about running against me, remember what I did to Sandra Roper. You know what he did to me? He had me arrested. Had me arrested on false charges. He almost had me thrown into Rikers Island. And for false charges. So that's why they say the velvet gloves. And even though he did that, I'm not a loud person, but I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter. And I fought, and I fought, and I fought, and I would not back down. That's why they call me the steel balls. As a matter of fact, I know the reporter who wrote the story because he had written a story about me, Judge Phillips, and John O'Hara, because we're kind of intertwined. Because District Attorney Charles Hynes had done the same sort of thing to Judge Phillips, John O'Hara, and myself. Right now, John O'Hara is suing the City of New York and District Attorney Charles Hynes for false charges for 20-something years. And finally, because Ken Thompson won in 2013 against Charles Hynes, he started the Conviction Review Unit. And based upon that Conviction Review Unit, John O'Hara was exonerated this year, January of this year. They've been 22 men, predominantly of color. John O'Hara is not a person of color, but this is the kind of thing that he's done. 22 men were released because of the abuse of process and the failure to be justice with fairness instead of justice with politics. And that's what Mr. Hynes was doing at that time, instead of looking for fairness.
Why did he give you such a hard time?
Because he wanted to make an example of me. In 2005, I ran again. 2001, I ran. Every 4 years, you have to run again. The next 4 years, 2005, no one had challenged him. I was the first person of color to challenge him. In 2005, even while he still had me under cloud of investigations and criminal investigation, etc., I went and I said, I'm running against you again. And that's where they came with the steel balls. It's like, this lady's crazy.
And being the first person of color to run for district attorney and to challenge the incumbent, how much pressure was on you then?
Oh my goodness, significant pressure. Very, very much pressure. Not just on me, on my family. My daughter was, my mother. Thank God my daughter just became a lawyer 2 months ago in New York. So I'm very happy about that, but there was a lot of pressure. It was a harassment. But the thing about it is that district attorneys are very powerful. They're prosecutors. They're very, very powerful. When you've heard the term, you can indict a ham sandwich, all you have to have is an allegation. Look at those 22 men that were released. Do you see? So, yes, that pressure was, I can't even begin to tell you what it's like. When you know that you're doing the right thing, you've done the right thing for all your years, and then someone is going to try to besmirch your reputation. But you know something? He can besmirch my reputation, but he can't touch my character.
And why do people call you the 2017 comeback judge candidate?
Well, that's why, actually. It's because of the fact that it's been a long time. It's 2001 is when I ran. This is what, 16 years?
16 years.
16 years. So now he's an afterthought. Mr. Hynes is now an afterthought. After he was very unceremoniously removed from office by Ken Thompson, who I was very, very proud of. My mother had such an investment in Ken Thompson winning. My mother was at Sloan Kettering with ovarian cancer. She had very little time left. He won the election That Tuesday, I think that was November 6th. November 6th, I believe that was. And my mother, she knew that she was leaving us. She said, Sandra, she could barely talk. She said, Sandra, I want you to go to his victory party. When we were watching in her room at Sloan Kettering, and we saw the results. My mother did like this. My mother actually did like this, because he had put me and my family through so much that even, I would say, so much that my family don't want anything to do with politics. When I told them I was running again, oh my goodness, they were not happy.
But you ran before for district attorney.
Yes, I did.
Why did you decide to run this time but for city council?
No, I'm running for judge.
Civil court judge.
I think that I have done so much thus far, and as an attorney for 30 years, I've done so many things. I think that I can bring something to the bench. I'm wiser. I have discernment. That's one in 1 Kings. That's what Solomon, that's what he was asked by God, what would you want? He didn't ask for riches. He asked for wisdom. He asked for discernment, to be able to judge people and to know right from wrong. I think I can bring that to the bench. I'm coming with compassion, because I know what it's like to be accused of something that you know you didn't do. I've seen the exoneration. Justice is supposed to be justice. You're supposed to look at the totality of the circumstances. And under those circumstances, I think that that's what I will bring. Justice with compassion and not politics.
And you had a rough time running for district attorney.
Yes.
How different, and more so it was against
very powerful
former district attorney Charles Hynes. How different is the experience this time running for civil court judge?
Oh, it's very, very much different. Very much different. When I ran for district attorney this time, there were warrants and subpoenas flying. It was the craziest thing. It was the craziest things. People were ripping off posters from my house on St. John's Place, ripping off posters from my neighbors. And I'm talking elderly people, because these were my grandmother's friends that were helping me, okay? My grandmother was still here, 2001. Her friends were helping her, and they're all senior citizens, and I happen to be the chairperson of 3 senior centers, and all the seniors were just helping me, etc., etc. I mean, they had people going to hand them warrants and subpoenas in the middle of the night. You know, my next door neighbor across the street from us, Miss Simpson, she's passed on now, they came to her door like midnight to give her a subpoena. She's scared, you know. How can you do that to senior citizens? So that's the difference. This is a piece of cake compared to 2001. This is, you know, no, doesn't even compare by far, by far.
And regarding the pressures that you had, you had a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure.
So there's
a
not
lot of pressure because I was threatened. I was told to come out of the race. Wow. I was threatened. I was said, come out of the race or we're going to disbar you. And you know what I told them? I said, I have on a nice suit, but you know what? Because I was threatened actually in the bathroom at Supreme Court. I told the person who said, oh, I said, look, I will take off this nice suit. I'll put on proper wear, and I will scrub every toilet in here to take care of myself and my family if you disbar me, but I'm not backing down.
And your family faced some rough times in the 80s,
Yes.
including the passing of your dad.
Yes.
Could you tell me more about that?
That was a very, very rough time in our lives. The day before, because my dad was in, I had just graduated with my LLM at NYU Law School. And I had taken my mom and my dad to an alumni association. There was David Dinkins, because I went to Brooklyn Law School. Geraldo Rivera, my dad had on a tuxedo, and my mom in a beautiful dress. We have a picture of that he just having a great time. My dad had lost a little weight, you know, but, you know, we didn't think much of it. That was like in June or July of 1988. And by September 1988, my dad left us from lung cancer. But the day before that happened, that Sunday, my dad passed on Monday, that Sunday, I got a phone call that there had been a fire at our home on St. John's Place. And my aunt jumped through the window. She never recovered from that. My grandfather, he had like a small stroke, but was enough to, you know, my grandfather used to take me to school. He used to drive me and my kids, etc. But after that fire, he was never the same, you know. And that was a rough time. We lost a considerable amount of our house. And then the very next day, my father transitioned over and left us. So that was a really, really, really rough time because we had not experienced something. That was our first significant death in our family, the passing of my dad, and he was very young. He was 54. My mom was only 49 at the time.
And did those experiences influence you in any way
Absolutely.
to run for public office?
Absolutely. My dad always told me two things. He said, Sandra, at the end of each day, when you put your head on your pillow, if you feel good about what you've done that day and you feel comfortable that you may not wake up, if you feel good about that, you're good. The second thing that my dad told me, unto whom much is given, much is expected. He says, Sandra, God gave you a little bit more brains than other people. Use it for good. So here I am. I'm putting myself out. I was speaking to some ladies the other day at one of the housing projects, and I told them that this woman said, oh, you know, you have to put God first. I do put God first, but I have to do my part. So I'm coming to the people. That's why I go to subway stops and go to other residences to say hello, to let people know who I am. Once I do that, that means I'm doing my part. And then September 12th, I'll let God do the rest. And then September 13th, he will make the final decision.
And you became a poverty law associate, then a civil rights lawyer. Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to take up civil rights?
Well, let me tell you what happened. Actually, as I said, I'm a pharmacist for 37 years, a hospital pharmacist, which is a little different from retail. Very different, as a matter of fact, because you're dealing in the hospital with very intricate calculations and experimental kinds of research items. Well, when I graduated from Brooklyn Law School, I was given what they call a fellowship for NYU Law to become a master's of law in trade regulation, with food and drug law being the emphasis. So after I finished NYU Law, I went to work with a pharmaceutical company. So I actually started as a pharmaceutical regulatory attorney. And the drug that I was on the team for that launched the drug Claritin. You know, Claritin is used for as a decongestant for allergies, et cetera, et cetera. And in 1988, I think that was 1988, it was launched. And I was part of that launch team. So after that, I felt, you know, I wanted to be more with the people. It was okay, but it was much more business oriented, dealing with the business people and advertisement. It wasn't what I would have wanted. So then I started doing poverty law. I did poverty law for a short time, and I liked that. And I started volunteering with NAACP Brooklyn. It was right on Fulton Street at the time. And I worked for Brooklyn Legal Services, which was across the street. So then I started volunteering, and I started seeing a lot of different sorts of cases, race discrimination, in whether it's in employment or in schools or just in public accommodations, even right here in Brooklyn. And I'm saying to myself, So I started volunteering. And the more I volunteer, I said, you know what? I want to go out on my own. I want to put up my shingle and start my own practice. And that's what I did. It's not an easy thing to do, but the good thing about it is that having your own practice, you don't have, from a business standpoint, you don't have money coming in all the time. The thing that helped me was because I was a hospital pharmacist, I had that backup. And that hospital pharmacist is what allowed me to do the kinds of cases that I wanted and that I enjoyed. And it was, I've had a very, very good experiences as a result of that.
And what contributions have you made as a civil rights lawyer?
Well, I sort of mentioned two that I'm very, very proud of, because as you know, as you're campaigning, people, you'd be surprised. This one young lady at Franklin Avenue subway stop, she asked me, what are you the most proud of? I never really thought about it until she asked me that question, you know, just on the spot. I had to think about it. And I am very proud of that particular, I told her that case where the gentleman had been working as a paramedic for the fire department, and he was denied his promotion to captain for 25 years. And it gave me great pride, and I felt so humble when he invited me to his promotion ceremony. And I was able to say, you know, I helped him to be able to get that promotion that they denied him for 25 years. So I was very, very happy about that. And then also the woman that I helped, 30 years, they denied her the ability to become an engineer because she was female, you know. So those are two accomplishments that I really am proud of, because, you know, it makes a difference. Now, this affects only those two people. I think the other thing that I'm mostly proud of, because it touches many people, is the bill that I wrote in 2003. I was a court attorney. A court attorney works with a judge in 2002 and 2003. In 2003, I started seeing there's what they call a creditor-debtor part, whereby, you know, if you have a Visa card or one of these cards and you run it up and you're unfortunately not paying, then they take out a judgment against you and then they bring you to court. But before they do that, what they do is once they get a judgment, they freeze your bank account. I saw all these seniors and disabled people keep coming in, and many of them that I saw frequently, they had no idea that they had a MasterCard or a Visa card or any of these things, because someone took their social security number. It could have been a family member, it could have been, you know, strangers, because of course they have home attendants sometimes and their own family sometimes. What they did, they would take their social security numbers and open up accounts. And then the senior citizen writes to pay their rent or pay their utilities, and all of a sudden everything starts bouncing. And then they find out that they have a frozen bank account. So the federal law dictates that Social Security is what's called exempt income. That means that even if there is a judgment against you, they cannot touch Social Security. They can't get their money back from that. So what I did, I said, under the circumstances in New York State, if the federal government says that this is exempt income protection, exempt income, why is it that someone has to actually come to court? They're afraid, they're coming without lawyers, and there are lawyers on the other side for Visa, MasterCard. So I said, let's make it easy for these people. If that's the case, so I wrote a bill in 2003. I did petitions called the Decatur-Stuyvesant Bank Restraint Bill. Okay. And the purpose of that was to stop those companies from freezing bank accounts of those who receive Social Security income that's directly deposited. Okay. Do you see? From the Social Security Department. So under those circumstances, I wrote that in 2003. But 2003 is the same period of time in which Mr. Hynes had me arrested. I was in the middle of doing this. He had me arrested, tried to have me sent to Rikers Island. My mother was experiencing breast cancer, so I was with her most of the time when I could get off early. And it just so happens the day after I was indicted by him, what happened, I was at the therapy center with my mom. And of course, at Estee Lauder in Manhattan on 67th Street, I think that was. And the cell sites are very bad. So I came out, gave my mother a little break, because it's very weakening. And as I was out, all of a sudden my phone started ringing, going off. And I'm saying, like, what's going on? So reporters are calling me. How do I feel about being fired? I said, fired? I didn't even know I was fired. So then I called the judge that I worked with. And I found out by some scuttlebutt, because I was very, very friendly. That's something else that my father always taught me. No matter what position I hold, always treat everyone with respect and dignity. And that's what I've always done. So everyone around me, they liked me. And they kind of looked out for me. Do you see? So then I started hearing scuttlebutt about what happened. They had intended to embarrass me. He had intended to embarrass me with TV cameras, to have me pretty much thrown out of the court, But God is good. He couldn't do that because I was at the hospital with my mother. But under those circumstances, I did what I had to do, and they never did.
And you also mentor young people.
Yes, I had many interns in my office. From the time I opened my office in 1990, I opened my office August of 1990. And I've had law graduates, I've had high school. As a matter of fact, I was out at Borough Hall last week at the station, and one of the interns that I had years ago passed by and said, "Miss Roper, how are you?" I said, I'm doing well. So many years ago, and they've gone on and they're doing wonderful things, so I've had them become lawyers, ADAs. It's a long, 30 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
And what kind of change do you want to bring to the civil court?
Well, I can't bring change to the civil court. Do you see? The laws are what they are. Okay? As a judge, I can't make changes. As a judge, as a judicial candidate, I can't tell you that there's certain things that I believe should be this way or should be that way. However, one of the things that I can talk about is administratively how things are done. And only one person has asked me this question that I could answer, and it just so happened she happened to be a lawyer, so it made sense that she would ask me this question. Yeah. And she said, "What was my thinking on alternative methods of as opposed to incarceration?" And I said, yes, I do agree with that. If someone needs rehabilitation because they have drug issues, then I absolutely agree with that.
And you say you had just modest finances,
yes,
and no political backing when you were running for district attorney.
Absolutely.
Do you have those in place now?
No. No. I'm going on wing and a prayer. That's how I do things. A wing and a prayer. A wing and a prayer, and just hope, hope things. I've been able to get to the ballot so far because, been working together with other people that are like-minded and like-pocketed, because they don't. So sometimes if you have $5, you put it all together, and you can all run together because everybody puts in the same. So that is allowed, and that's the way I've been able to thus far. But we have till September 12th. We have to wait and see how things go from there.
So why do you want people to vote for you and not the other candidates?
That's something I can't answer. Okay? The reason I can't answer that is that running for judge is very different than any other office. And I get that question a lot. I can't tell you that there's something wrong with someone else.
Okay.
I can only tell you what's good about having me be your judge. Do you see? I can tell you, look at what I've done. Look at what I've accomplished for the community, both nationally. I was admitted to the Supreme Court in 2004 because I did what's called an amicus curiae brief, which is a friend of the court's brief on a specific matter dealing with in my opinion, voter suppression in New York State based on the definition of residency. Do you see? And those are the kinds of things I've done. So someone has to look at me, what I have done, and then they have to look at other people, what they have done. And then they make their decision based on that. Here I am, and then you decide. But I can't tell you I'm better than this person, or that I can't do as a judicial candidate.
It's really a different kind of campaign.
It's very different.
Wow.
Very different. And the other thing that people don't realize, I can't know who donates to my campaign. I can't ask people to donate to my campaign. A committee has to do that. If you're running for any other office, you could pick up the phone and say, please, such and such, can you donate to my campaign? I cannot only not do that, but I can't know. And the reason for that is because they want to make sure that if I do become a judge, that there will be no conflict of interest between someone who may have given to my campaign. So if someone did give to my campaign and they come before me in court, I wouldn't know that they did. Do you see? So that's why I can know family. Family can't come before me anyway because there's an inherent conflict of interest because they're my family. But others, yes, it's very, very different when you run for judge. All I can say is see what I've done, okay? And if you like what you see, you like what you hear, you like what you read, here I am.
Where can people find you?
Well, I have, and this is not this is my committee. My committee has a website and Facebook page, which the technology, the social media is very new to me. So I'm just hearing about it. But I have a Facebook page, Roper for Judge 2017. That's the Facebook page. And then the committee also has a website, Roper for Judge 2017 .nyc. Yeah, that's how websites are, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You see, I'm confused because I was just about to say an @ Okay, .nyc. Yes. So that's where I can be found, or at a block party, or at a subway, or pop up any place, at a church. Yeah. At a synagogue, at a mosque. You never know where you're going to find me. It's like, where's Waldo?
And again, when does voting take place?
September 12th. A lot of people don't understand. They figure, election day is November. Brooklyn is very different from many other areas based upon the way we have primaries. So if you don't come out to vote September 12th in that primary, that's where you have the choice. By November, you no longer have a choice. Many people think, I'll wait till November. No, the September 12th primary will determine if I am able to be on the ballot in November. Okay. So if I don't make it through September, you won't see me again. I will be, and whoever will be there. Do you see? But the difference is, again, between someone like myself, I'm running as an independent Democrat, and those that are being backed by the Democratic machine, is that they already have a leg up because they have the whole machine behind them. They have all of the power brokers, etc. All I'm doing is appealing to the people and saying, here I am. Here's what I have done. Consider voting for me.
So if you make it on September 12th, you will be on the ballot again on
Exactly.
November 7th.
Exactly.
Okay. So good luck.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And it
Thank
was
you.
nice and my pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me too. Thanks.